Welcome everyone. So thank you for joining us with Yetenaweg CME session, our geriatric medicine consecutive sessions. So we plan to deliver this session until October 29. That will be our last session. So Yetenaweg, I'm sure you have heard it. We try our best to deliver medical knowledge for the general population as well as for the health professionals. And we have multiple, like this number has increased, multiple active volunteers and in different countries. So you have heard about the things we do, like in health promotion, community engagement, and we plan to do at the end of our year, we plan to have another community engagement sessions. So make sure to tune in on our social media platforms to get updates on the next sessions, and we plan to have and share the mentorship and skill sharing programs as well as medical education, and the main one being CME. So we're more than a digital platform. We try to reach out to the general population and advocate health. And so our CME, it is freely accessible, and just like today, we invite renowned international speakers to share their experiences. And today's session is in partner with EMA, the Ben Medical Association, and we plan to have the next consecutive sessions as well. So you can find we will be recording this session, so you can find this session on YouTube, and you can share it there as well. So make sure to follow our social media platforms in sort, and you can email us or text us there if you have any comments. And our big collaborator is Roha Medical Campus. So they're helping us currently with the research fellowship. And so at the end of the day, we plan to have health advocacy networking, and we try to fill the knowledge gap, especially today's session is a big one because we don't have the geriatric medicine field in our country, and we plan to have anyone interested to reach out to Professor Mark as well, and we plan to network and increase the knowledge. And so we also encourage local funders to support us. So when you come to our CME, if you have any questions, make sure to send us on the Q&A and the chat box. And at the end of the webinar, you will have the chance to ask our guest speaker. We'll be giving you 2 CEU units for this session. And to get that, you must attend the whole session, and you will need to fill in the Google form we'll be sharing at the end of the session, which will help us for the attendance and the personal details. And if you get 50%, we'll be getting you the certificate. And it might take 1 to 2 weeks, so bear with us. So thank you. Let me introduce my guest without further ado. Professor Mark Clarified is an Emeritus Professor of Geriatrics and Head of Sciences in Ben-Gurion University of Niger. He is the former Director of Medical School of International Health. He is currently the Associate Director of Global Health at the Medical School of International Health. Professor Clarified received his MD degree from the University of Toronto and completed his specialization in family medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. In the same year, he completed his MPH in community medicine and public health from the University of Toronto. He then specialized in community medicine at the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada, and specialized in geriatric medicine from a corporation professionally. And Professor Clarified has held various leadership roles throughout his career. He served as Associate Director of Undergraduate Education and many more. And he has been Director of Geriatrics Ward at Jewish General Hospital in Montreal, and Associate Director at McGrail Center for Studies in Aging from 1988 to 1992, and Director of Division of Geriatrics at Ministry of Health in Israel, and currently serving as Section Editor for the Journal of American Geriatric Society, and Chairperson of Israel of Israel National Council of Geriatrics. He has had multiple publications and CME sessions and various chapters in various books in topics mainly aimed at aging and dementia. And he has got multiple book reviews, abstracts, and medical and non-medical publications. He has research interest in aging, Alzheimer's disease, and related with dementia in the organization of healthcare services, medical history, as well as ethics. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Clarified. Thank you for, with all the inconveniences, for joining us from Ethiopia. He's currently joining us from Ethiopia, so he really likes our country. He has shared his experience to many expertise, and so you can continue, Professor Mark.
Thank you very much. I guess someone has to make me co-host so I can share my screen. Is that done, or should I wait a minute?
Yes, I'll let you a host now.
Okay, there you go. Now let's see that I can do this properly. You know that I'm challenged in these things. Voila. Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Right, you can hear and you can see. Wonderful. Well, Amasaganalu, it's a pleasure to be here. I am in Mekelle right now, as was said. I came to Ethiopia from Israel, where I live in Jerusalem, a few days ago, and it's really a pleasure to be with you and to help you understand how to care for older persons in Ethiopia. This is the we'll give you. I don't have any disclosures. I have no conflicts of interest, and no one is paying me. No drug company knows about this, so I have no disclosures to make. So what will we discuss today? We'll talk about an introduction, and then in a couple of weeks, I think it's August the 6th, we'll talk about NCDs in low and middle income countries with Ethiopia as an example. Then we'll go on in September to talk about dementia, which is called the Great Epidemic of Alzheimer's disease. And then finally, I'd like to talk about what we don't know. That is, what are the central research questions in age and aging, so that you guys can all get curious and interested and win the Nobel Prize after you answer some of these questions. So I'd like to start most of my talks by saying that there are some major issues that we have to consider whenever we talk about anything. And stop share more. How's more?
Yes,
there you go. Someone
correct now.
Okay, I'll keep. So I like to remind us that there are major issues beyond whatever subject I talk about. I use this slide for every talk because I want to remind you, and there is now peace, and I hope to help my friends here move things forward in health. The second issue, which you must never forget about all of us, is global warming. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, this problem is going to fry all of us. So whenever we think about anything, we should always think about what would be the effects of what we're doing on mitigating global warming. It used to be that COVID was an issue, but this is less of a problem. But I guess I could change this to the danger of pandemics. We must always be prepared for that. And then finally, and this is the subject that we're going to talk about today, and aging. And I think aging is affected by and affects all of these. So why should you listen to me? What do I know about age and aging in Ethiopia? Well, I actually know something about it because I spent about almost 4 months in Gondar a couple of years ago, just before COVID hit, studying old age in Ethiopia. So I won't say I'm an expert in Ethiopia, but I do know this country better than many of my friends. I don't know it as well as you do, but I have some knowledge of, and I hope with my knowledge, I'll be able to make what I'm saying more relevant to you than if I were someone who didn't know this beautiful country. And here I am climbing in the Simeon Mountains in the lower part, just pointing out the beauties. So what are the questions we're going to answer? First of all, is aging a problem? A lot of people like to talk about aging as a problem, and I don't. I think aging is an issue, it's a challenge, it's a question, it's a topic. Pick your concern. And it also affects the whole world. There isn't a country, including Ethiopia, that is there an Ethiopian flag here? How embarrassing. There isn't one, eh? Anybody see one? No. Okay, I'll have to add one next time. But it's a problem everywhere in the world, an issue everywhere in the world. Why should you study aging? Well, to start with, It's hard for you to see this diagram, but it basically says this arrow here is the percentage of old people in the world, and this arrow here is the percentage of young people, children in the world, under 5, over 65. And you can see we're right, this are years, you can't see that, but I'll come back to it. We're right about here. This is 2020, right where they cross. So every day that goes on now, percentage-wise, there are fewer children in the world and more old people. That's not exactly the case in Ethiopia because you still have a lot of kids here, but you have a growing number of old people. The second reason to study aging is it's an interesting phenomenon. Even if there were very few old people, it would still be interesting and I think worth study. Now, this is directed to you people on this talk. It has great career potential, especially in Ethiopia, because right now the number of old people is rising and it's going to continue rising very quickly into the near future. And any of you who take training in care of the elderly will be in great demand by your system within a very few short years. And finally, we study aging because it's dangerous. The older you are, the more likely you are to die. And that is a truism, but this is factors associated with death in critically ill patients with COVID. It's hard for you to see. This is not a great slide for a Zoom talk, but these are characteristics: age, sex, BMI, and all kinds of comorbidities, coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, etc. And what this shows is to the right is death from COVID. If you get COVID, whether you die or not. And this is a multifactorial study which show every variable controls for every other variable. So if you just look at chance of death from COVID, it's zero, pretty well zero under age 18 to 39, and it goes up as you age. So this is the category for 70 to 79 right here, and this is the category for 80. People my age are 600 times more likely than my grandchildren to die of COVID should we get this disease. So it is dangerous. Old people are more likely to die than young people, but they're also more likely to die of disease than young people. Why should we study it in sub-Saharan Africa? Because to a large extent, this generation here in the middle, the parents of this child, the children of this old lady, are gone. And in some parts of sub-Saharan Africa, they're gone for various reasons, such as HIV, AIDS, maternal death. But more common and more positive is the sense that many young people, many people in this generation go off to find work in the big cities, leaving these people alone in the villages. And that's also, I know, a phenomenon in Ethiopia, which means that artificially there are more old people in the villages than there are in the cities. Now, this is called the population pyramid. I hope you're familiar with it, but I'll just go over briefly. This is children up 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, up to age 80. And this is the number of people. And the dark blue is the number of people that were alive in the world when I was born in 1950. And if you look here, this is 70. The area under the curve that I'm pointing out is the number of 70-year-olds that were in the world when I was born, when I was one of these children. Today, the number of 70-year-olds is the area under this curve that I'm drawing out for you. Now, there's still a lot of kids in that world today, but the percentage, the bulk of people in the world, there's many more old people in the world today than there used to be. And that's going to continue to balloon out. So by the time I die in 2050, look how many old people are going to be around. By 2050, you guys will all be deans of medical schools and heads of ministries of health and prime ministers. And you're going to have to deal with a lot of old people in your country. This is the graph that I showed you in the first slide. It's percentage of people in the world, and it shows under age 5, over age 65, 1950, the year I was born, 2023 right now. And you can see there's this crossover. So we're living in revolutionary times. We're living in an era, the first time in history, there are going to be more old people than young people. Up until now, there have been many more children in the world than old people. That is reversing. So that once again, by 2050, it's going to be reversed significantly, even in relatively young countries like Ethiopia. Why should we study aging? Well, the world is getting interested in it. And this is, as I mentioned, this is an article in The Economist, a well-known English weekly newspaper. And they wrote an article called The Joy of Growing Old. They were interested in aging. So this issue is becoming an issue around the world, in the media, in Hollywood, in movies, in books, in novels. Economists are interested, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this is very good news. Why? Because it means that even though there are more old people and they have their challenges, it means that we have reduced the number of premature deaths. The reason there are so many more old people today than there used to be is young people aren't dying in childhood and in young adulthood and in middle age. And that's the good news. So I like to tell people who worry that the world is getting older, oh, how are we going to cope with that? It's good news. It means people aren't dying. People your age aren't dying, and they're going to make it to my age, which is, of course, good news in the end. Why else should we look at, well, here's an article from Sub-Saharan Africa saying why we need to prioritize needs of older persons. This issue is beginning to be discussed all around the world. And I'm giving you guys a little bit of a preview so you can be career-wise and knowledgeable about something that is bound to grow. If I told you that that the price of a stock in the world was going to go up 100 times in the next 5 years, wouldn't you want to buy that stock? Yes. I'm telling you right now that the whole field of aging is going to go up like the price of Apple, like the price of Microsoft. And don't you wish you had bought shares in Apple and Microsoft 15 years ago? You'd be zillionaires by now. So buy into age and aging, you'll be zillionaires in a different way a few years from now. What are we going to cover? Well, today's the introduction. I'm answering what is aging and why is it important. As I said, I mentioned these are the next topics. What is aging biologically? This is a picture of Abraham Lincoln, the American president during the American Civil War. And this is Abraham Lincoln in 1860, the first year of the war. And this is Abraham Lincoln in 1864. The war is almost over. Look how he has aged. Look how rapidly he has aged. And if I were facing you in an audience, I would ask you why you thought that this was the case. Why did this man age so rapidly? And you would probably tell me, rightly so, because of the chronic stress of running a country during a war. And you can see the stress lines on his face. 4 years from there to there. So the question is, what happened? What were the biological concomitants of this? So when we talk about aging, we talk about it from a sociological, biological, and demographic. The medicine of old age is here, but the effects on society and the effects on economics and the effects on politics are here and here. So although I'll concentrate in my 4 sessions in the next month or so on the biological medical side, I do want you to keep in mind these other factors, which are really important. They're always important in health, but they're particularly important for older people. So aging is, what is old age is also not just a question of years, it's a sociological construct. So here's a graph. It's a little hard to see. These are countries at the bottom: Turkey, UK, Czech Republic, et cetera, mainly wealthy countries. And the yellow number is the age at which people in this country say old age begins. So if you ask Turks, when does old age begin? They'll say it begins at age 55. If you ask Greeks, they'll tell you old age begins at 68. If you ask these people, when does childhood end? The Turks will say it ends at around 33. The Greeks will say childhood ends at around 50. Amazing, right? These I can't see your faces, but I can imagine if you haven't fallen asleep, you're laughing and finding this extremely interesting. Different countries have a different concept of what old age is, and different countries has a different concept of what youth is. And so when you ask someone whether they're old or not, it depends on what society they come from in answer, regardless of the chronological age. Okay, the biological, we're going to concentrate on that. This, is DNA, and aging is caused by a very general gradual failure of a very efficient DNA and protein repair mechanism. In all your cells, as we're sitting during this talk, and you can't blame me, each of your DNAs and RNAs and proteins are being broken, shattered, broken in half by exogenous sources and endogenous sources. Endogenous, ultraviolet light, radiation, chemicals in the environment. Endogenous by alkylation, hydrolysis. And what happens is little soldiers come running up from this DNA repair, and they fix this broken bridge. They fix this pothole. They fix it, and they're very good at it. But sometimes they miss. Sometimes they repair this bridge, but not very well. Sometimes they fill in this pothole, but only partly. And with time, these errors accumulate. And when they accumulate, that's what aging is. So the splitting of DNA happens with errors, and proteins are produced that are not perfect. And with time, these errors accumulate. And so aging is the result of a very gradual repair, a very gradual deterioration and failure of this repair mechanism. As you know, you can try and keep a car alive forever. Whoops, did I cut myself off? No? You can see me all right? I pushed a button by mistake.
Yeah, we can see.
We can, yeah, we can hear.
Everything's
Thank
okay? Okay.
Everything's
okay.
perfect.
And you can see that this, we won't go into detail, but this DNA damage that's caused by a failure of repair leads to aging, and it also leads to cancer. And I don't have time to tell you about the interrelationship between aging and cancer, but there is one. And I'll just give you one factoid. If I were to ask you what percentage of cancers in the world are in people over age 65, I would not get the right answer. Just think for a second. What do you think the average percentage of cancers in the world are in what age group? The answer is that 90% are in people over age 65. 90% of the burden of cancer is in older persons. And that's explicable by this relationship of a failure of DNA repair. I don't have time to go into that. There's references at the end of my talk. You can read about it. I hope it tickles your fancy and you'll read more about this. This is a cell membrane, extracellular, intracellular, and this is just various pathways. I won't go into them in detail, but various pathways, inflammation, cell survival, stress defense, that show you what happens in a cell that's trying not to age, that's trying to defend itself against this gradual repair. And one example is a drug called metformin, which you people know for treating of diabetes. Some people think that metformin causes a slowing of age via these various mechanisms. I don't have time to go into it, but once again, if any of you are interested, you'll look up metformin and aging, and you'll get a whole bunch of articles, and you can read more about it. But we know something about the cellular biology of human longevity, and we know more and more than we used to. This shows you the genetic side. This fellow has what's called progeria. He's age 26. His name is Sami Basso. He has a genetic disease called progeria, where this mechanism is very faulty. It's very inefficient. So when these things happen to him, they don't get repaired, or they don't get repaired well. It's a genetic disease, and as a result, he ages very quickly. So he looks like a man of 80, and he's only 26, which shows you the genetic component. I'm now going to switch to two concepts which many people often get confused. They're two different concepts: maximal lifespan and life expectancy.
Sorry,
If you were in
Professor,
an audience,
your slide is not moving. Sorry.
oh, whoop. Okay, hang on. How's that? Not moving?
It's now moving. Yeah.
Oh, what do I do? Whoops.
You can start sharing it again. Yes.
I should have done. That was a good thing I did?
Yeah, you did a good thing. You can start it now.
Okay, let's try again. Okay, is that moving? Is that moving?
Yes, if you could make
We
it
back?
on. Yes. Now we're back.
Okay, so here's Sami. Did you see him?
Yes, now we're able to see him.
Okay, so he's 26 years old. Great. And he has this disease called progeria. Two concepts, maximum life, key concepts, maximum lifespan and life expectancy. And many of you get this confused. I don't know you, but I know you get it confused because everyone does. So let's unconfuse you. Let's talk about maximal lifespan. This is the Brooklyn Bridge. This woman, Madame Jeanne Calment, a French lady, she lived to 122 years, 5 months. She's the oldest documented person in the world. A lot of people claim to have lived longer, but they haven't. She's the oldest person who showed us her birth certificate. She really lived 122 years. And that's the maximum human lifespan. the maximum life. It's not her life expectancy. That's different. We'll come to that. Okay. And this business of very old age is not new. This is a cemetery in Fort Erie, Ontario, what was called the Colored Cemetery, people that fled slavery in the United States and came to Canada. It's hard for you to see, but it says this man died, can you see this? Age 78 and 8 months, back in the 1800s. And this fellow, it died in, what does it say? 1908. He died aged 80, what does it say? 87. Can you see that? And 5 months. You can see it?
87 impressions. Yes, we
Right.
can.
So people have lived a long time for many years. It's not new. It's just that very few of them made it into this old age. But some of them were very lucky and they made it to 122. That's the maximum lifespan. And it is determined by how good Madame Calment's DNA repair mechanism is. It's very good, right? Her DNA and proteins were repaired extremely efficiently, but in the end, it failed and she died, okay? This is the maximum lifespan of different species. Let's look at mice and men, or woe mice and woe women, okay? You're not allowed to be sexually, you can't say men anymore, you have to say men and women, right? So humans have a maximum life expectancy, maximum lifespan of 122, and mice have a maximum lifespan of 4 years. Monkeys have a maximum lifespan of 50 years. Now, our DNA and the mouse DNA is about 97% in common. Our DNA with monkeys has about 99% in common. So it's not the DNA that makes the difference. It's this that makes the difference. Mice have a very poor repair mechanism. They age and die very rapidly. Monkeys have a reasonable one that keeps them alive till maximum 50. And Homo sapiens has a very good one and keeps us alive to a maximum of 122 years, okay? I want you, those of you who don't understand this, to come back to me at the end and ask me any questions about this, because it's a central concept. And it brings up the difference between, what is the difference between aging and disease, aging and diseases of aging. And if you can tell me the difference between aging and disease, you'll win the Nobel Prize, because nobody has yet been able to explain get these diseases, but not all of them get these diseases. Madame Calment didn't have any diseases. She just died in her sleep at 122 without any heart attacks, without any strokes, without any illnesses, but she died of old age. So the difference between aging and diseases of aging is a central issue. We'll come back to that in the 4th lecture for those of you who are interested. Tune in. As doctors, what you have to know is that clinical aging, whatever the cause, however it's caused, results in a loss of reserve. It doesn't necessarily result in a disease, but a loss of reserve. So that, taking you back to this slide, showing you healthy old people die of COVID much more than healthy young people. Healthy old people die of COVID, not sick old people. Sick old people die even more. But just being healthy, being over 80 and not having any of these, not being fat and not having any disease. Remember, this is a multivariate analysis. It means that the cause of death is controlled for in all of these variables. Age alone causes a rise in mortality from COVID, because age, this mechanism is not good in old age, even if you're healthy. You have a clinical loss of reserve. So anything that pushes you, like a virus, a bacterium, bleeding, a car accident, hypertension, you'll do worse when you're old than when you're young, because you don't have the reserve of a young person. The typical patient that I look after, what we call a geriatric patient, and what you've seen in your own country, I know they do exist. They're older, and we'll get to what this number means in a minute. Usually geriatricians look after people over age 80, but I do sometimes look after what I call youngsters, people who are 65 or 66. They're usually female because the men have died. They often, not always, they often have multiple chronic pathologies. They don't always. The old people like Madame Jean Calment would not come to me because she wasn't sick. But the sick old people, the geriatric patients, have multiple pathologies. And as a result of their multiple pathologies, they take multiple medications, which is called polypharmacy, which itself is a disease. And one of the things that geriatricians are skilled at is looking at a patient that's taking 10 drugs, 12 drugs, 15 drugs, and looking at this list and adjusting it, stopping certain drugs, using other drugs that are better for them, etc. Most geriatric patients are poor, without a pension. Many of them, as I alluded to, are socially isolated, either due to internal migration of the younger people or other reasons. And remember that old people that you see, even however sick they look, they're tough, because if they hadn't been so tough, they'd be dead 10 years ago. Every old person, even the most frail, is tough by dint of getting here. And I'll give you an example of a really tough guy. You know who this guy is? My father. This is my father, age 97. Look at him. Don't mess with him. He's about to have endovascular surgery of an abdominal aortic aneurysm. Okay? He's 97. And here he is, 2 days, one day post-op, back at home. This is the home in which I grew up in Toronto. My father is practicing his golf skiing. 1 day after surgery. He's tough. He's like these people, but tough. Okay? All right. That's the biological side of aging. I'm going to switch now to demographic. And I already touched on that a little bit. What do we mean by elderly? At 60, 65, 75, 105? What number makes a person old? Well, if I were to ask you, you would say 65 probably, because that's the age that many demographers look at when they define a country as old or not. They look at the percentage of people over age 65. And they say the percentage of people over age 65 in Ethiopia is, does anyone know? You know what? Can we do this for a sec? Guys, can we open up? How do I do this? Can we open up the chat for a minute?
Yes, it's already open. Yeah.
Okay, so put in, I can't see it, but I trust you. Put in your numbers. What percentage of people in Ethiopia you think are over age 65? Can you put that in?
They're texting it. Yeah, can you see it?
I can't see it, but you can read it to me.
Yeah, it says 60, one says 30, another one 10, 15, 3, okay. 20.
20, okay. So the real number is 4% of people in Ethiopia over age 65. Most people around the world, exactly, I see that person. Most people around the world think that there's many more old people in their country than there is. In Ethiopia, it's only 4%, over 65. Does anyone know in Israel how many people over age 65? Put it in the chat again, please. Why can't I see chat? I should be able to see chat, right? Let me click on that. There we go.
You can see it. Yeah.
Okay, so what percentage of people in Israel are over age 65? 50, 60, 15, keep going, 25, 30%. Okay, got it. We get the point. Once again, and don't be insulted, you're all wrong, because everyone's always wrong until they hear my lecture. 11.5% are over age 65. And in Britain, I won't go through the exercise again, the number is 20%. And in Japan, the oldest country in the world demographically, it's 25%. Okay? Ethiopia is 4%. Japan is 25%. Does that mean we shouldn't study old age in Ethiopia? No. What's 4% of 115 million? Anybody tell me? It's 5 million. You've got 5 million people in Ethiopia over age 65. That's a lot of people. It's true they're diluted by the denominator of children, but that doesn't make them non-existent. Okay? So remember, this number is just made up by, we'll see in a next second, and the WHO uses 60 as opposed to 65. So whenever someone says the percentage of people in my country is X, say, do you mean over age 65 or do you mean over 60? You can also measure percentage over age 75 or percentage over 105, but most people like me do that, but you don't have to do that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, who decided this number is 65? Okay, here we go. Does anyone know who this is? Let's open up the chat. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Does anyone know? You can put a question mark and push chat. Bismarck, great. Where's Ibrahim? Kola Kavod, well done. Ibrahim Ali, well done. Okay, this is Bismarck. And if I were in an audience with you, I'd ask Dr. Ali to stand up and tell us who Bismarck was, but I'll tell you. He was the prime minister, the premier of Prussia, which was the state before Germany became united. And in 1880, he decided he would give a pension to all German workers over age 65. That's where the number came from. What percentage, and you put this in the chat again, this is fun using the chat. Look what I've learned today. What percentage of German workers in 1880 made it to 65? Okay, Ibrahim Ali, let's see, you got the answer once. What do you think? Okay, now you're getting smart, you guys. Well done. Small percentage, you're saying 5, 5, 2. In fact, you know what? I don't know the answer to the question, but it was very, very few people in Germany made it to 65. So Bismarck could look like he was a good politician. The newspaper said, oh, Bismarck gives a pension to all people over 65. Isn't that wonderful? In fact, initially, he gave a pension to everyone over age 70. But after a few years, his Ministry of Finance says, you know what? We're not spending any money. We can afford to lower the age to 65. And that's what happened. And from then on, every country copied Bismarck. And that's why we use this number 65. It has no biological significance. Is someone 64.9 very different from someone 65? Is someone 65.1 years very different from someone 65? No, it's just a decision made by Bismarck. Now, we use it today because everyone uses it, but it doesn't mean it's biologically significant. Back again, here's people over, see, this is people over age 65, okay, today. This is the number of people over age 65, okay? This is the number of people over age 65 when you become the premier of prime minister of Ethiopia. So you'll still have a lot of kids, but you'll have a significant increase in the number of old people. Population over age 60. Now I'm using WHO data. This is the world. Millions of people over age 60. Look at how many people were over age 60 in the year I was born. And if you want to sing happy birthday to me, you can. I can't hear you. Look what's happened in the ensuing 70 years. Here we are today. This is the number of people over age 60 in the world. It's about 1,000,000, 1,000 million, 1 billion, okay? But what's interesting for you and what you probably didn't know is the vast majority of people who are over age 60 live in the lower and middle income countries. Although these countries are in the less of old people over 60 live in the less developed. That's because the bulk of people live in the less developed regions. So you have this paradox that you have a low percentage of old people, but you have a large number of old people, 5 million in Ethiopia, et cetera, et cetera. We use that as a definition. Live in poor countries of the world. How well prepared are poor countries of the world for aging? I know you know, not well prepared. The percentage of 65, when I said what percentage of people in Ethiopia are 65, and some of you said 20, 30, and somebody said 3, good for you. It's 4 or 5%. This percentage depends on an interplay of these 3 categories: mortality, fertility, and migration. The fewer people die, fewer people are born, people move. That combination of factors determines how old by percentage 65 a country is, okay? Okay, I want you guys to stand up, stretch your legs, take a yawn. I'm gonna have a sip of water. That's because moving, exercise is the best form of anti-aging medicine. You're going to hear a lot in the world about anti-aging medicine. A lot of people want to make a lot of money preventing old age. And I'm going to give you a secret right now. Nothing works better than this. And you have a lot of work to do in Ethiopia because even if old people or young people want to walk or exercise, it's very hard in the cities to do that here. There are very few places that look like this in Addis, right? So you have to think about, when we went back to sort of the policies that make for healthy aging, you have to think of how is it that we can make the environment better for young people to be healthy, so they'll, as they age, they'll become healthy old people and not sick old people. Okay, have you stretched? Can I start again? You've had your glass of water, fed the dog, gave your kid a sandwich. We can keep going? Okay, great. Remember I told you maximum lifespan in humans is 122, but what's life expectancy? If I asked you what life expectancy, okay, let's hear. Put in the chat box, what's the life expectancy in Ethiopia today? Give me the number. Guess. What do you think the life expectancy in Ethiopia is? 60, 64, 60, 55, keep going. 48, 59. Okay, good. Okay, you're not bad. You're not bad. But what I didn't say, and what you gave me the answer for, was life expectancy at birth. Be careful when you say this word life expectancy, ask the person who's asking you, do you mean life expectancy at birth? Because life expectancy at birth is the number of years, the age to which an average person born today can be expected to live. An Ethiopian baby born today can expect to live, and I'll get to that in a minute. These are the Israeli numbers. A male baby in Israel born today under present circumstances is going to live an average of 80.6 years, and a female baby 84. The difference between these two numbers, anybody want a Nobel Prize? Anybody want to win a Nobel Prize here? Put up your hand, please. Put up your hand. I want to see hands. Who wants to win a Nobel Prize? Okay, just 5. Come on, you guys. Don't you have any ambition? Okay, if you can discover, there we go. If you can discover the reason for this difference, and this difference is everywhere in the world. If you can discover, you'll win the Nobel Prize. Israel has among the highest life expectancies in the world. Babies born today in Israel will live longer than babies born almost anywhere else in the world. I don't have time to go into that. We'll talk about that another time, maybe. If you want an article, I can send you. Ethiopia, you're doing much better than you were doing in the past. Ethiopia, 2011, females, males, remember this gap? If you can determine the difference between this gap. So men are living longer than they used to. This is today. They're living longer than they used to. Females are living longer than they used to. The gap between the two is expanding. And you can see it says, what does it say here? 68 and 62 for men. And it fell over the last 2 years. Why did it fall? Fell for 2 reasons. Fell because of the war, young men getting killed, and not just young men. And it fell, and more, you can see more men died than women. And it also fell because of COVID. But what will happen if we maintain peace, we don't have a pandemic, is these numbers will continue. You're doing pretty well in Ethiopia. You're one of the poorest countries in the world, and yet you have an average life expectancy for the world. Half the countries in the world have a lower life expectancy at birth than Ethiopia, and half the countries have a higher. So you're doing well, but you could do better, okay? Life expectancy at birth, how many years a baby, will differ across countries and within countries. I showed you Israel versus Ethiopia, and it changes over time. So you see that it changes over time, and it's also different between countries. Today, Israeli babies born today will live 80. Ethiopian baby males born today will live 62. Okay, so it differs with countries and it differs with time. Here's a map. The redder the map, the worse, the lower life expectancy. So here you see Canada and the United States with the high life expectancy, Australia with the highest life expectancy. I think this is, excuse my ignorance, I think it's Sweden or Finland. It's one of the Scandinavian countries. European countries, Switzerland has a high life expectancy. You can't see Israel, we're right here. And you're right here, unfortunately, you're quite red, but it's better than it was. But this shows you that there's serious life expectancy problems in sub-Saharan Africa. You know that. You don't need me to tell you that. Okay, let's talk. Who's this guy? Put in the one face in the world, in anywhere in the world. Who is he? Put him in chat. Whoop, internet connection unstable. Ooh, let God, inshallah. Can you guys hear me all right? Have you
Yes,
frozen?
we can hear you. We can
I don't see it in the chat. Oh, Albert Einstein, keep going. Right, Einstein, good. He is the most recognized face in the world. And you know where his papers are held, his archive? Anybody know where his archive is held? You get special points, special CME points if you know where Albert Einstein's archive is kept. Nope. Right. Very good. Hebrew University. You get points. The university my wife teaches that, and I hope she'll teach you at some point. So Einstein discovered the theory of relativity, which we won't go into. This is Clarifield's theory of relativity, because I want to be famous too one day. This is the relativity of how countries age. This is percentage of population over age 65. You're familiar with that, okay? This is time. This is back in 1750, and this is today. In 1750, already 5% of people in France were over age 65. It took them 300 years. Okay, in 2050, their population will be 25% over age 65, like Japan's is today. It took them 300 years to age demographically from 5% to 25%. Let's look at Mexico. In the year 2000, where many of you were already born, right? In the year 2000, Mexico had a population 5% over age 65, the same demography as France had 300 years before. But look how quickly Mexico is going to age. It's going to reach 25% over age 65 in just a few short years between the year 20 and 2050. And we're already halfway there, right? We're halfway there. Here we are, right? Here we are. In a few short years, they're going to have zillions of old people. Do you think they're ready for it? No. France got rich and then it got old. Mexico got old, but it's still not rich. Okay? Mexico. What about aging in low-income countries like Ethiopia? A few words on this. This is mortality in Ethiopia. The ranked reasons for mortality, 1990 and 2018, 26 today. And the blue is caused by non-communicable disease. So ischemic heart disease back in 1990 was already the 6th most common cause of death in Ethiopia. Stroke was next. Back in 1990, other cardiovascular, 18. Look at the blue, look how it's risen in the last 20 years. Ischemic heart disease is now 3, stroke is now 5, other cardiovascular is now 10. Look at the amount of blue here and how high up it is, and look at the amount of blue here and look how low down it is. Look how quickly Ethiopia is changing its causes of mortality to the effects of non-communicable disease. You're growing up, for better or for worse. This just shows you, this is low and middle income countries, causes of death, NCDs, non-communicable diseases, communicable diseases. This is today, this was back in 2020, and this is 2030. You can see that the percentage of people dying of NCDs is already nearly half, and is going to go above half very quickly. This is just a few short years away. These are rich countries. It's already 85% in Israel. The causes of death, NCDs are already 85. It's going to go up to 89. We haven't got much to go. But you guys already are high and getting higher. And again, that's a good thing. It's a good thing because it means that people aren't dying of acute and maternal and child health care. So that's, although we don't like to see people die, they have to die of something. And at least they're not dying of acute disease, malaria, things of that nature. Or they're not dying as much as they used to. Okay? And that's the good news. Here's some bad news. For people 65 in sub-Saharan Africa, the patient's healthcare needs are higher than for people of similar ages in more developed countries. Now that's a bit confusing. The y-axis here is disability prevalence. The higher you go up, the more disabled the population is. So this is rich countries, 10% of the population, 45, is disabled. As the population ages, 45, 55, 65, 70, the disability index goes up, okay? So too in LICs in Ethiopia, but you can see that the disability is higher at every age, right? It's higher than rich countries, so that a 65-year-old in Ethiopia is the average 65-year-old in Ethiopia is as disabled as the average 75-year-old in Israel. Okay, the average 65-year-old in Ethiopia is as disabled as the average 75-year-old because aging happens more rapidly in poor countries. Again, I don't have a lot of time to go into it, but that's the environment in which people grow up. How well prepared are you for this aging tsunami? Well, most of your healthcare structure health infrastructure has been built for acute and maternal and child healthcare. These are laudable goals. This is great. You should look after these things, but you are not built yet for chronic disease. You're built for acute disease. Of all the aid that pours into Ethiopia and other poor countries in the world, only 3% of it goes to NCDs. And guess what percentage goes to geriatrics? I'm not even going to tell you to put this in the chat because the number is so low, the range of guesses is going to be low. It's almost 0%. There's almost nothing that comes from the WHO, from the Gates Foundation, from any of these bodies that do good work that goes to looking after look after old people. Now, you guys will tell me, and I know from Mekelle University, I know from Gondar University, I know from Addis Ababa, I know that there's very, very little education in your medical school in geriatrics, and that's why your organization has asked me to speak, okay? There is a problem when governments make decisions, when they try to determine, should we look after kids or old people with hypertension? With kids, you give them a vaccine and you're finished. And with old people, you diagnose hypertension at age 55 and you treat them for another 30 years. So I can understand why the ministries of health have a problem with this, but they have to get over it. How well prepared are you for the social dislocation of the old people left in the countryside as young people move to the cities? How well prepared are you for the fact that almost none of your old people have pension rights? Prussia, back in 1880, was able to give pension rights to its people over age 65. And let me tell you something, Prussia in 1880 was a very poor place. It may not be as poor as Ethiopia, but it wasn't rich. It wasn't because they could afford it, because they could afford it better. They did it because they thought it was important, okay? You can see this is an example of people that my students who have become interested in aging. This woman, Dr. Sarah Kita, did her MPH at Hebrew University, the Braun School of Public Health. And I recommend that you look up the International MPH at the Braun School. And you'll see this is Hadassah in Jerusalem. There's a wonderful MPH program. And right now we have 2 Ethiopians. Last year we had 2 Ethiopians. So if you want to get a good MPH, the scholarship goes from door to door. We pay everything, but you have to be pretty smart. So just apply if you're smart. But I'm just showing you this to show you that the interest in aging in the LICs is starting to grow. If it can happen in northern Uganda, it can happen in southern Ethiopia. Okay, what should we do? How should we look after old people? There's 2 aspects. There's the public preventive care, public health, and there's clinical practice. This is not a course in either public health or clinical practice, but I'll give you a couple of hints. This is a very bad slide. Never show slides like this. This is a slide you should never show, but I'm showing it to you because it's from the New England Journal of Medicine. And what it shows is that there are, I'm reading this, best by interventions for tackling NCDs. And it gives you tobacco use, alcohol, unhealthy diet, exercise. We already talked about that. And it gives you don't have to look into this. You can look it up. I'll send you my slides. You can look it up. But it shows you programs that have already been developed. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you want to deal with NCDs in old people, There's lots and lots of studies that have been done with policy recommendations that you can find here, okay? If you're clinically interested, there are articles in PLOS Medicine, which is an online journal for free, and it has packages of care for example, epilepsy in low and middle incomes. It has packages of care for dementia, and I'll talk about that in lecture 3. It has packages of care for substance abuse, in other words, there's a literature that tells you how to look after aged people with NCDs, people who are aging with chronic diseases. You don't have to do research to find out how to do this. If you want to do research so that you can learn more, that's great. But there's guidelines already out there, and you can read them and you can learn from them. You can do the right thing. Okay. So coming back to the end of my talk, why should we study aging? Well, I hope I've convinced you that this demographic imperative forces you to study aging. The only people that can avoid aging, doctors, in the next 30 years are what I call the 2 Ps, pathologists and pediatricians. Everybody else has to learn about older people, because in every specialty, in OBGYN, there's a GYN side, there's a gynae side, and there's lots of old ladies that have gynae problems. In surgery, a lot of surgery is done in old people. Cancer care, most cancer occurs in older people. Psychiatry, there's a psychiatry of old age, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the number of children are going down, the number of old people are going up. You have to know whether you're a geriatrician or just a family doctor or internist or surgeon. You need to know some principles. I think that the reason to study aging, even if this were opposite, is it's interesting. And I hope you'll agree with me that it's an interesting phenomenon. Now, there's a selection bias. The people who didn't think it was interesting didn't come onto this. And there's 62 of you interested people. Where are the other 120? They're not interested. Okay, that's their problem. But those of you who are here, I hope, found this interesting. As I'd mentioned to you before, get on a rising elevator on the 1st floor. It'll take you up to the 10th floor. And remember, we need to know how to look after old people, because it's dangerous to be old. It's dangerous for them, not dangerous for you. They're not a danger. Okay, is old age, are you now convinced, I hope, not that it's a problem, but that it's an issue, it's a challenge, it's a question, it's a topic, it's a concern. I don't like to put negative things on old people. They're not a burden any more than children are a burden. They're just, if you think old people are a burden, then you may as well jump out the window right now, because you're going to be old one day too. And I hope you'll make it to becoming old, and you'll hope that the system would be ready to look after you as well. So old people are not a problem. They're just the results of a lack of premature death, which is a good thing. Okay. So if you want to read more about this issue, this is on the biological side. If you look up, the Reef lectures are lectures put out by the BBC, and they're online for free. And this fellow, Tom Kirkwood, is one of the, gerontology is the science of aging. All geriatricians, people who look after old people, are gerontologists, but not all gerontologists are geriatricians. If you look up the Reef lectures, he gave 4 lectures on age and aging, and they're short and they're interesting, and they'll tell you much more about the sort of basic science. If you're interested in aging in your part of the world, look up this article that I wrote together with a colleague in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society. And if you have trouble finding it, one of your staff people can send me a note. I can even send it today. I can send it by email, and you can distribute it if you wish. But there's a whole literature on this subject. So the next session, tune in on August 6th. We're going to talk, I touched on the issue of NCDs, non-communicable disease in OP. I'm going to go into it in much more detail. So, Amasaganalu, and here's my email if you have any questions or complaints. And I'm going to stop sharing now, right? So I can see all of you. Is that what I should do? Team?
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Mark.
Stop sharing?
You can
there
stop
we
sharing.
Are. Okie doke, here I am. How much time did we take for that? Can I see what time it is? Oh, an hour, not bad.
Yeah.
Right? I stayed in time.
Yeah.
I stayed in time. Okay, I'm at your service.
Yeah. They're texting on the chat box. You can see it, right?
Yeah, I can open that up. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Such a wonderful talk. Thank you. You're welcome. Oh, Mulakan. Hi. Of course, yes. Here's Mulakan Arakan, who came to our school in Beersheba as a scholarship student for a couple of months. Yes, I remember you well. Nice to see your name there. Okay. Thank you. That's all right. I'm not looking for compliments. I'm looking for questions, but you're quite welcome. I'm looking for questions. Do we open this up to a panel view, or how do you run this, Dr. Scanish?
So anyone who has any question, they can text it on the Q&A box. I think we've got one question now. Yeah, before we share it, Professor, can you make me a host so that I can share them the link so that they can fill the questions?
It just says change panelist appearance, and you're too good looking for me to change your appearance. So how do I do that? Mute, stop video, chat, pin, spotlight, make host. Voila. Do you want to make? Yes. There you
Thank
go.
You.
You're the host.
So if they have any
you're the hostess with the mostest. Okay.
Thank you very much. So anyone who has a question, they can raise their hand, and I can unmute them.
Okay, sure.
But meanwhile, there's one question in the chat box. It says how metformin prevent aging. I think in the start of your presentation, you were telling us about metformin.
Just the question, I didn't hear it's not in the Q&A. Oh, how metformin? Okay, all right, good question. First of all, that's a great question, because this is a huge concept. The question is, how does metformin retard aging? Well, first of all, we don't know that it does. It's a hypothesis, okay? And right now, a randomized controlled clinical trial is being done, in which they divided old people, healthy old people, into two groups. Group number 1 will get metformin. Group number 2 will get a placebo. Now, how many years do you think we're going to have to run that trial to see if it works? Any guesses? About 15, 20 years. Okay, but what's it based on? It's based on the fact that we know that in some species, probably including Homo sapiens, fasting, and you guys in Ethiopia might live, this might explain your life expectancy, which is higher than you'd expect for your socioeconomic status. Caloric, we know that caloric reduction with the healthy diet in middle age seems to increase longevity by mechanisms of slowing, of increasing the efficiency of that DNA repair mechanism. Fasting in middle age seems to enhance the power of that DNA and protein repair mechanism. That's how we think metformin is working. Like fasting, it mimics the biochemical, it mimics in the cell the purported biochemical mechanism of fasting. Now, I don't want you all to run out tomorrow or even tonight and start buying metformin and start taking it. Metformin is a very good drug for diabetes, and you should prescribe it for diabetes. Wait for the clinical trials, but that's the theory. Whoever asked that question, did that? No, 15 and 20 sec. Mulakan, you didn't understand. I think you may have misunderstood. You're going to have to run the clinical trial for 10 or 15 years before we have an answer. It's not going to give 10 or 15 years of impact. We don't know whether it's going to have an impact. It'll take 20 years to know if it'll have an impact. So I'm glad you wrote that. I don't want you to misunderstand that. Okay? Did that answer the question of the person who asked it? Just put a thumbs up or a thumbs down somewhere.
Yeah, I hope, yes. So Ibrahim Ali asked, despite all the challenges we are having in the health sector, including the limited resources, how should the prioritization be offered to the older people group, including me?
Okay, how should we prioritize the elderly? Is that the question?
Yes, in
okay.
like in resource
okay.
reading.
Okay. So first of all, you guys have to become good at looking after old people. That, as doctors, that's your first responsibility. Secondly, you have to push your seniors, and if you're already senior in the system, push your medical schools and your residency programs to have more lectures, not necessarily by me, but people like me. Have a presentation on geriatrics, invite speakers who can talk on the topic, encourage people to learn more about this. And then I can tell you the good news, and I think we'll talk about it next week, is that Ethiopia has a national plan for care of the elderly. There's a very large document which is put out, and I can send it to you unless I can send it to you and you can read it. So the Ministry of Health is becoming more interested in older people. And I met with them in Addis a couple of days ago and offered my services, not just to give lectures like this, but to help them move things along. And one of the things I recommended that they do is they train a few young doctors to become geriatricians. Send them abroad, send them to England, send them to Canada, send them to Israel. We'll teach you. You'll come back and you'll become the flag wavers. Old people need champions. And it's you guys that have to become these champions. And there's many ways to do it. Do research into the elderly. Okay, that also raises the profile of older people. Okay. I hope I answered that question. That's a big one. Each one of these questions could be an hour of discussion, but I'm trying to give you the short answer.
Yes, definitely. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah. It says you're muted, but I can hear you. Funny. It says you're muted. No, now you're okay.
Yes, I think my internet is unstable. Tadail, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, thank you. So I've shared the document on the chat box. It's an attendance link, so you can everybody make sure to fill it in and do the questions. And I've shared the link tree. So Tadail, you can continue asking the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Zaga. Okay, the next question reads, in Ethiopia, things are recognized of being a public health significance if the prevalence is greater than 5%, thus gaining attention and support from government policies. How are you planning to push geriatric medicine to significance, and how can we, the medical community, help?
How am I going to help you? I didn't. Can I see the questions, because I can see the chat. Could you put on chat and I can read it, then I can understand it better. Is that possible?
You can open the Q&A, Professor.
Okay. Oh, there we go. That was easy. Oh, relay. Okay. Let me answer the first ones first. Relationship between cytokines and aging, especially leukotriene. I have no idea, Dr. Kalal. No idea. You have to Google it. I don't know. Story. What is association with? What's Getachew is asking? What's KLOTHO?
Yeah,
what is that?
Ask him again. Yeah, if he can raise his hand.
Yeah, there's something I can't understand that word.
Can you rephrase your question, Getachew?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go down to Ibrahim Ali. If I remember, Dr. Ali he knew something. He had a good answer, didn't he? He knew that percentage of people 65. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've asked this question. Yeah. He knew
despite
about
all the
this
challenges we're having. How should we? Yeah, I think I answered that. Okay. Dr. Haile Bahimet, in Ethiopia, things are recognized. Here we are. Being a public health significance if a prevalence is greater than 5%. I see. Thus gaining attention. Well, you've got 5% over age 65. How are you planning to push geriatric medicine to significance, and how can we, the medical? Okay. So, first of all, the number of old people is 5%. Remember, they're sicker here than the 5% would merit. They're actually, the burden of old people in Ethiopia at 5% is equal to the burden of, say, 7% in a rich country. So you can already say that. Secondly, the problems of old people, and we'll talk more about these, the percentage of hypertension is well over 20%. The prevalence of diabetes in older persons is well over 20%. The prevalence of dementia, which we'll hear about in the third lecture, is well over 20%. The percentage of patients with polypharmacy is well over 20%. So I think if the number 5% is important, you can show aspects of care of the elderly that are well above 5%, many of them, and you just have to look in the literature. And that's why you need to do more research in care of older persons so you can show these numbers. Now, again, the good news is the government, there is an office in the Ministry of Health that seems to know about this, that seems to care. So join the club. Okay, I hope I answered that question. Are there any more Q&A? No.
Thank you, Professor. The earlier question has been rephrased. He has rephrased it as the KLOTHO protein is a novel beta-glucuronidase that is capable of hydrolyzing.
Ah, it's a protein. Okay.
Yes.
No idea. Sorry, Geriatric, no idea. Yeah, you have to look it up. But I'll tell you something. The answer to these kinds of questions is readily available in Dr. Google. You know, there's a literature on everything today. Go into PubMed, look that up, you'll get an answer. If there's literature on it. I don't know that. I'm not a basic scientist. I'm a public health clinical person. So I know more basic science than most geriatricians, but I don't know as much as there are many people that study these questions, and you can look them up and find them. Nowadays you can look up on Google just what I can look up just as quickly, and you're more computer illiterate than I am. You'll find the answer more quickly than I will. So look it up.
Thank you. I can see 38 responses until now.
Here's another question.
Yeah.
Here's another question. In the list of your 21st century, what do you think about including the current gender identity crisis and raising LGBTQ wave across, as it is a clear violation? And do you think it will impact the future aging of Homo sapiens and disturb existing demography? So let me try and answer this carefully. It looks to me like this doctor, you're upset by the LGBTQ movement. You think that this is an abomination. Am I right about that? Probably I'm right. Okay. Oh, hold on. The answer to this is as follows. I'll answer the next question. This will have no effect on the future of aging and disturbed exhaustion. Why? The answer to that is the answer to the first question. 10% of human beings are homosexual, if you study the world. This is not a medical abomination. This is a biological fact. And in fact, many mammals, 10% of different mammal species are homosexual. It may make you uncomfortable, but it's a fact. Whether it makes you uncomfortable or not, it won't have any effect it won't have a major effect on demography because two reasons. Homosexuals are only 10% of the population. They're not going to, that's number one. And number two, they often adopt children, and it's better for a child to be, in my view, it's better for a child to be adopted by a loving homosexual couple than to be left in an orphanage. That's an issue that's very inflammatory, and I don't want to go into it anymore, but that's my position. I hope, whether you agree or disagree with me, I hope you understood my answer. We don't have to agree, we're allowed to disagree. We're not allowed to disagree violently, that's called war. We're allowed to disagree intellectually, that's what this is all about. And I'm happy if any of you want to disagree. In fact, I open the floor to you. Tell me what I said was wrong. But here's another question. How can we make sure healthcare system is not overwhelmed by elderly? In the US, the cost of Medicare has been an issue for a long time. Okay, that's a great question. So first of all, we do need to use can everyone see that question, by the way? I'm just rattling it off. You guys can see the questions as well.
Yes,
okay.
So
it's true. It's true that old people are more expensive than dead people. That's true. The question is whether the society wants to invest in you, I'm talking to you guys, when you get older? And the answer should be yes. Medicare is the worst example in the world because the United States has the worst healthcare system in the world. Did you hear me? The worst healthcare system in the world because it's almost totally privatized. It's true that Medicare, which is universal healthcare for older people, is not necessarily all private, but it's largely private. Your job in Ethiopia is to ensure that you have a robust public health system, that you have appropriate public-private partnerships where the public sector is in control. The private sector brings the bucks and the public sector is in control. And that's a big problem. If you want to look up, and again, my wife wrote an article with Ethiopian colleagues on a public-private initiative that worked in Mekelle for renal dialysis. So if you're interested in that, send me an email later, I'll send you the article. But the other answer to that is that old people like my father lived for 100 years. My father had that operation that I showed you, but he lived for 100 years. He hardly used the healthcare system because he was healthy. He was a healthy old person. Healthy old people don't use much medical service. They use more medical services than healthy young people, but they don't bankrupt the system. Sick old people can be a stress on the medical system. So your job is to not only ensure old people live a long time, but they live into healthy old age and they die like my father in pretty good shape at age 99.9. Does that answer your question? Okay. Are there any more questions? Nothing now again. Can you send us your email in the chat box? Let me see if I can do that. Can I do that? I'm really a dinosaur when it comes to these things. You can get my email from the organization. It's not that I don't want to give it to you. I just can't give it. Don't know how to do that. Okay. Q&A. So I answered that one by saying, talk to the organization. I'm not hiding behind anything. Just my technological age-related weakness. When I have problems with the economy, I ask my kids for help. Anonymous attendee, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Can we have another seminar on the physiological change that comes together with geriatrics? You have to ask the boss. Dr. Zerganish is the boss, not me. So I'm actually not the best person to give that lecture, but I can send you an article that will help you understand the answer to that question. So I think the best thing is the question should come to the organization, Yetenaweg. They should send it to me in a concentrated way, and I can send it back to you when I have time. But I also recommend that you wait. Oh, someone's shown my email for all to see. There it is. There you go. Okay, you got it. Okay. We can also finish early. You guys can go out for a walk, get some exercise.
Yes, I can see 48 responses until now. Anybody who has not filled in the question link, make sure to do it. I'm just sharing it now. So that we will be closing it in a few minutes. And Professor, if I can ask, we can also do the questions together in like 5 minutes.
I should do it with you mean, not with the group.
With the group, yes, with the group. After I close
sure.
the
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. You mean after you close, you want me to go over the questions? Okay. Let's hope I get the right answers.
Thank you.
See if I understood what I said.
Okay. Is there another question? If you guys have any question, I can see 3 people who raised their hands. If you can kindly text on the group, or is it by mistake?
Yeah. Put it in the chat. put in the questions and answers, then I can read it.
Yeah. Dr. Bemnet is saying already got 100%. He was really listening well. And
then it was too easy. I have to make the questions harder. No, congratulations. No problem.
I think it was the interactive session that made them answer the questions. The questions were practically what you discussed about. Yes.
Right.
So there are 52 responses until now. Anybody who has got a question, you can text it on the Q&A. In like 30 seconds, we will be closing the form so that we can discuss it here. Meanwhile, let me try to open the questions on my laptop. You can have
So
a
I should
copy.
close the Q&A and close the, I should close that.
I will close it. No problem.
There you go.
Yes.
I'm back with you. Now you're in charge. Oh, there's Dr. Fitzum in the States. Hi, Dr.
Yes. Dr. Fitzum has joined us. Can you talk? Yeah.
Hi, Professor Mark. It was a great lecture. I was listening.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much.
Great. My pleasure. Thank you.
It was one of the most interactive sessions we had by far. Thank you for all your patience.
Well, my pleasure.
Yeah. So let me just close the form. We've got 53 responses now. Yes, the form has been closed. Let me share the questions and we'll do them together.
So the phenomena of age and aging have long been of concern to high-income countries. I got to just a second. Although an increasingly important issue in poor countries, such as little attention has been paid to the issue. Where's the question? True or false? Okay, right. Well, most of you got it as true. Very good. Okay. It's a new issue. Second question. Okay, I like this better because it's a multiple choice. The definition of age at 65 is commonly used across the world. Which of the questions are correct? This figure was chosen in the 19th century. Correct. It has no specific biological significance. Correct. All countries, it has no 64 it's the same as 65, is the same as 65. Okay. All countries in the wealthy parts of the world use it as an age where universal pension distribution begins. No, most countries do, but not all. The WHO, so that C is incorrect. Although most countries do use it, not all countries do. Some have 60, some have 67. In fact, Israel has, just while we're talking about, Israel has the highest pension age in the world, 67 years old. Okay. Hold on, someone's just sending my host here. Just a sec, we'll call in a minute, hang on. And D, the WHO, as I pointed out, uses 60, not 65 for its own reasons. Okay. Next question. Okay, the percentage of those above 65 is often used as a marker of how old a society is and as a point of comparison between and among. For example, Israel's 11% 65, Ethiopia. This figure is mainly dependent on all factors except, so fertility, absolutely. Mortality, absolutely. Migration, absolutely. The GNP of a country, no. It does have an effect, but not nearly as strong as fertility, mortality, and migration. And the example of Ethiopia is a very good example. I told you that Ethiopia has the average life expectancy for the world, and yet it's among the poorest countries in the world. So, it can't be that the GNP of a country directly affects it. It's better to be rich than poor, but we know lots of rich countries like Russia that has very poor life expectancy, and we have lots of poor countries that have better life expectancy than some rich countries. So that's that question. Okay. The last one should be pretty easy. It's too easy. From a biological point of view, but if you learned it, that's great. From a biological point of view, aging is a result of the gradual failure of a very efficient DNA, RNA, protein repair mechanism. True. Okay, there you go. Any questions? Do people have questions about that?
There was one question, I think. It will be our last question. Fasting has shown many benefits, but some articles show that might cause osteoporosis. How can that affect aging?
This is in chat or in questions and
The
answers?
Q&A. Yeah. Q&A.
Can you repeat the question, please? I'm not sure. I know it's about osteoporosis, but I didn't hear the question.
Fasting has shown many benefits. Yeah,
yes.
it says fasting has shown many benefits, but some articles show that it might cause osteoporosis. How can that affect aging?
Okay, I think I heard every other word, but let me repeat what I think you asked, the question asked, that aging is, people, it's good that people are aging and not dying, but aging is inevitably associated with osteoporosis. Was that the question?
Yes.
Was that you're muted? Yeah. Okay. So that comes back to the question of what's aging and what's disease, and osteoporosis is a very, very good example of how hard it is for us to tell the difference. And I'll give you an example of that. Almost all women over age 80 are osteoporotic. Some women get osteoporotic younger than that. But it seems to be a phenomenon, thinning of the bones seems to be a phenomenon that's universal with aging. Just like, I'll show you another phenomenon that's universal. See that? Balding? It's universal. Even old men with lots of hair have less hair than when they're young, okay? All old men have less hair than when they're young, even those who aren't bald, okay? So balding is like osteoporosis. Is it a disease? No, because my wife, believe it or not, still loves me, even though I'm bald. And my children could. Osteoporosis is not baldness. Osteoporosis makes older people more vulnerable, and men get osteoporotic too, but they get osteoporotic after women do. So when does osteopenia, which is the thinning of bones that's analogous to balding, when does it become osteoporosis? And in fact, it's a little bit like the definition of aging as 65. There's no number that tells you when you're osteopenic or whether you're osteoporotic. It's just that the more osteopenic / osteoporotic you are, the more likely you are to fracture if you fall. So what we want to do to prevent fractures in old people is to treat and prevent osteopenia and prevent falls. That's not a topic I'm going to talk about, but it's a classic topic in geriatrics. So I hope I've answered the question as best I could shortly.
Yes, you did. And it was well received. And I think everybody is happy. You can see the emojis, right?
Yeah, I can. They're so cute. Are they coming from one person or multiple? Where do they come from?
People. Yes, it's from multiple people.
They're
They
so
can text.
cute. I've never seen them float like that. They're adorable. Thank you. It's a little distracting, but it's cute. I like it.
Yeah.
See one that looks like this. What should I do? Or a face that looks like that. They're, as long as they're positive, send them. Don't send me any negative ones. It might make my internet unstable.
Yeah. So everyone, thank you for joining us, Professor Mark. Thank you for trying all your best to present this amazing session.
Nice
and
to see you all. Goodbye from Mekelle. Next time I talk. My pleasure. See you in Jerusalem next year in Jerusalem. That's where I'll be next time I talk to you.
Yes, in August 6th, we'll be seeing you.
Okay, I'm gonna leave this talk now and see you again.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Good evening. Bye-bye.